Hello, this is Grant Hughes of Grant Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Today's video is regarding the manhunt and the ended manhunt of Vance Boelter, and he is the individual who shot two state senators and their spouses. And so that's four total people, the Hoffmans and the Hortmans. Now, the Hortmans were both killed. Melissa Hortman was the senator, and John Hoffman at the other residence, he survived with his wife, and both of them were shot 8 or 9 times, the Hoffmans, and they survived. They're still in the hospital currently, however. The Hortmans both were killed by David Boelter. Now, you'll get people out there saying, "Gosh, Gray, how can you say that? He's innocent until proven guilty," and cry about it. He is the killer, everybody. There is no doubt about it whatsoever, and it's really obvious. Now, you'll probably have a bunch of wackos out there that say, "How can you tell? He was wearing a mask," blah, 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 blah. All right? He is the killer. All right? In this press conference here, we'll listen to this United States Attorney's Office individual speaking about new information, including the fact that Boelter tried to shoot 2 other senators in between the Hoffmans and the Hortmans. It's absolutely incredible. And another officer actually pulled up next to him at the 3rd location, and he wouldn't respond to them, and then the officer then went on to that senator's house. And then he drove away and made his way to the Hortmans' house. And what this United States attorney will tell us is that it is a thing of nightmares. And how absolutely true that is, it's absolutely incredible. Listen to this.
Good morning. My name is Joe Thompson, and I'm the acting United States attorney for the District of Minnesota. Late last night, the U.S. Attorney's Office filed a complaint bringing an array of federal charges against Vance Boelter for his horrific attack on our state and our elected representatives. Political assassinations are rare. They strike at the very core of our democracy. But the details of Boelter's crime are even worse. They are truly chilling. It is no exaggeration to say that his crimes are the stuff of nightmares. Boelter stalked his victims like prey. He went to their homes, held them out as a police officer, and shot them in cold blood. Now, there's been a lot of information and misinformation out there about Boelter's crimes. We have filed a detailed 20-page complaint and affidavit that sets forth what happened in this case. I'd like to share some of that information with you now.
So if you can find that 20-page document that he's talking about, please send it to me.
In the early morning hours of June 14th, Boelter went to the homes of 4 Minnesota state politicians with the intent to kill them. Boelter first traveled to the home of Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman in Champlin, Minnesota. Boelter arrived at the senator's home disguised as a police officer. He arrived in a black SUV with emergency lights turned on and with a license plate that read police. Boelter wore a black tactical vest and body armor. He carried a flashlight and a Beretta 9mm handgun. He also wore a hyper-realistic silicone mask. Senator Hoffman had a security camera. I've seen the footage from that camera, and it is chilling. Boelter knocked on Senator Hoffman's front door and repeatedly shouted, "This is the police, open the door." Senator Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, came to the door. When they opened the door, Boelter shined the flashlight in their faces and said there had been a shooting reported in the house. Boelter asked if they had any weapons. When Boelter lowered his flashlight, which he had shined in their face, they realized that he was not a police officer. They shouted out, "You're not a cop. You're not a police officer." Boelter then announced, "This is a robbery. and forced himself into their home. When Senator Hoffman attempted to push Boelter out and stop him from entering his home, Boelter shot him repeatedly. Boelter then shot Miss Hoffman repeatedly. Boelter fled the scene, and the Hoffman's daughter called 911. Unfortunately, the Hoffmans survived, although they remain hospitalized. After shooting Senator Hoffman and his wife, Boelter traveled to the home of another Minnesota state representative in Maple Grove, Minnesota.
Yeah, so they obviously have some pictures from that, and they're looking at them off to the side. I don't have those pictures currently, but I'm sure we'll find them before the show tonight, and we'll also go over all the questions and answers on the show tonight as well. But from here, he traveled south, and he made his way to Maple Grove. Now, I don't know who the senator was in here or where the house is, but it's in this general area where I have this circled here. So, he likely probably drove down here, got on a freeway, cut across, came in, and made his way to another senator's house.
Video surveillance showed that Boelter rang the doorbell at the state representative's house at approximately 2:24 a.m. on Friday night. Again, he was dressed as a law enforcement officer, wearing a tactical vest and body armor, carrying a handgun and a flashlight, and wearing that same hyper-realistic silicone mask. Again, the images, as you can see on the screen, are haunting. Now, fortunately, the state representative was not home. She and her family were gone on vacation, and so Boelter left.
I mean, what a miracle that was, too.
Boelter then traveled to the home of a Minnesota state senator who lived in New Hope, Minnesota.
All right, now let's take a look at where that is on the map. So New Hope is down here. So from here, he traveled, maybe like that, down to New Hope. So somewhere in this general area here is the third location. Now listen to this.
He parked in the street in that same black SUV with the police license plate. At about 2:36 a.m. on Friday night, after learning of the shooting of Senator Hoffman, New Hope police dispatched an officer to conduct a wellness check on the state senator who lived in New Hope. When the New Hope officer arrived at the scene, she saw Boelter's black SUV parked down the block with the lights on. The New Hope police officer believed that Boelter was a police officer who had been dispatched to the scene to check on the status of the state senator. The New Hope police officer pulled up next to Boelter in his car, rolled down her window, and attempted to speak with him. Boelter did not respond. According to the officer, he just sat there and stared straight ahead. So the New Hope police officer, who had been dispatched to the scene, proceeded to the state senator's home, and she waited for other law enforcement to arrive. When they did, by the time they did, Boelter had left the scene. Boelter then traveled to Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, in the home of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman. At approximately 3:30 a.m.
Here, let me show you where that is. So from New Hope, they drove all the way up here. So you can see they're trying to sort of throw off the directional. It wasn't like they went from here to here and then somebody else. It's like far away after each one to try to minimize being caught. So after New Hope here, he drove all the way to Melissa Hortman's house, and unfortunately this is where Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed, and it's right here. And this is where everything changed in the fortunes of Vance Boelter, because without this incident here, he likely would still be on the run and nobody would know who the hell he was.
At approximately 3:30 a.m., Boelter arrived at Representative Hortman's house in his black SUV with the police license plates. He parked in the driveway and left the emergency lights on his SUV flashing, as if he was a police officer. Boelter approached Representative Hortman's home, again dressed as a police officer, wearing the tactical vest and body armor, and wearing that hyper-realistic mask. He was armed and carrying a flashlight. Before he entered the home, 2 Brooklyn Park police officers arrived at the scene. They too had been dispatched to check on Representative Hortman after learning of the shooting of Senator Hoffman. When they arrived at the scene, they saw Boelter's black SUV parked in the driveway with the emergency lights flashing, and they saw Boelter standing in front of the house several feet from the door. When Boelter saw the officers get out of the car, he drew his weapon and began firing. He rushed into the house through the front door, firing into it. He repeatedly fired into the house, and when he entered, he murdered Representative Hortman and her husband, Mark. The Brooklyn Park police officers fired at Boelter as he rushed into the home, but he escaped into the home and out the back. Officers recovered Boelter's 9mm Beretta, along with the body armor and the mask, behind the home along his path of flight when he fled on foot. They later searched Boelter's car, where they found 5 more firearms, including assault-style rifles and a large quantity of ammunition. Boelter also had in his car notebooks containing a list of more than 45 Minnesota state and federal elected officials, including Representative Hortman. Now, Boelter planned his attack carefully. He researched his victims and their families. He used the internet and other tools to find their addresses and names, the names of their family members. He conducted surveillance of their homes and took notes about the location of their homes. He also prepared in other ways. He concealed himself as a police officer, outfitting his black SUV with police lights and a police license plate, wearing a black tactical vest and body armor.
So that's exactly what I was thinking, is that he took his own vehicle. When I looked him up on Ben Verified, he owns a 2015 Ford Explorer, and the vehicle that, and those are all often used as police vehicles, and the vehicle that was spotted on top of the trailer, I think even in like this shot right here, this is what I was using. It's exactly the same. That is a 2015 Ford Explorer right there, and that is the vehicle he was using. So I figured that he actually modified his own vehicle to look like a police vehicle.
Carrying a police flashlight and a handgun. And of course he wore that hyper-realistic silicone mask as seen on the surveillance videos. The video of his arrival and shooting of Senator Hoffman is truly chilling. Again, it's no exaggeration to say this is the stuff of nightmares. There's a photo of the firearms found in Boelter's abandoned SUV. Based on these crimes, we brought a federal complaint charging Boelter with an array of federal charges. Counts 1 and 2 charge him with stalking. Count 1 charges him with stalking Representative Melissa Hortman using interstate facilities, and that's Title 18 United States Code 2261. The statutory penalties there are life in prison. Count 2 similarly charges him with stalking State Senator John Hoffman using interstate facilities. The maximum penalty of that count is 20 years in prison. Counts 3 and 4 charge Boelter with the murder of Melissa and of the Hortmans using a firearm.
Mark.
In violation of 18 U.S.C. 924J. And these are punishable by a term of life imprisonment or even death. And counts 5 and 6 charge him with shooting the Hortmans and the Hoffmans using a firearm and both of those counts also carry a maximum sentence of life in prison. Now, before I finish my remarks, I want to say a little bit about law enforcement and the manhunt that we've heard about the last 2 days. Over the past 48 hours, federal, state, and local law enforcement from throughout the state of Minnesota have worked together to carry out the largest manhunt in Minnesota history. Now, a lot has been said about law enforcement in recent weeks, but make no mistake, the men and women of our federal, state, and local law enforcement put their lives at risk and on the line to keep Minnesota safe. They work tirelessly, day and night, to make sure that the tragic events of Friday night ended without further violence or bloodshed. We owe them all a debt of gratitude, and they will forever have my respect and admiration.
All right. Well, wasn't that absolutely chilling? I mean, this guy was going to kill 4 different people, and probably way more than that even after that, because this was still early in the morning. And when he went out the back, they might want to check that pond back there. Who knows if he ran over here and threw something in there. But he started shedding all of his gear back here when, after killing the Hortmans, he went out the back, and his mask was on the ground, his gun. I mean, how stupid is that, by the way? But I think he already knew the fact that his vehicle's outside, that they're going to know it's him. He didn't expect to be caught here. In fact, I think he was going to, as I've said on my show, he was going to go home and unmodify his vehicle and make it look normal, and then put his normal plates back on, and nobody would be the wiser. The only reason he was caught was because an officer showed up on the scene while he was there, and he didn't make it back to his own vehicle, which led to the identification of him. But man, he went to the Hoffmans first, up here. Then he went to Maple Grove to attack another senator. They weren't home, they were actually out of town. And then he went to New Hope to attack another senator, and when he went to that scene, an officer was already in that area showing up to the senator's home, and they tried to talk to him, and he didn't say anything. And then the officer, I don't know what happened after that. I mean, wouldn't you have reported that? Like, wow, this guy looked like a cop, but he wouldn't respond to me. But that officer drove to the senator's home, and then so that plan was thwarted, saved their lives. And then he drove from New Hope to Melissa Hortman's home, and the officer was just a little too late getting there. But because that officer showed up, that's why he was caught and stopped him from killing more people. And as we know, he escaped out the back, and then eventually he made his way south all the way down to, I think it's right down here. So this is where Vance's house is, and he was found crawling around somewhere around in this area over here. So he was probably trying to get it back to his home, and maybe even made it to his house at one point, but in the woods, and could see that there was a law enforcement presence there probably waiting for him. He probably didn't see that there were helicopters flying around at that property the day before, etc. All right. So anyway, it's absolutely crazy. We'll play the full press conference later on the show and talk about it. All right, everybody, thank you all very much for watching. If you could make sure to hit that like button for me, share the video, and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and as I always say, until next time, be safe out there.